r/relationship_advice. FIL spent my money on golden child wife, so I exposed him. #chunk1, the discovery. I found it by accident. That's the part that keeps replaying in my head. If I hadn't needed to check our joint savings balance for the mortgage payment we were planning, none of this would have happened. Or maybe it would have happened anyway, just delayed. Either way, I'll never forget that moment last Tuesday afternoon when I logged into the account and felt my stomach drop like I'd stepped off a cliff. The balance was $7,400 short. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, refreshing the page over and over as if the numbers might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. I went through every single transaction from the past 3 months, my hands shaking so badly I could barely use the trackpad, and that's when I saw them, a series of withdrawals and transfers that didn't match anything Marcus and I had discussed. $3,200 to Luxury Automotive. $4,100 to European Tours LLC. Another $2,800 marked simply as cash withdrawal. Thousands of dollars. Gone. Vanished from the account that Marcus and I had been meticulously building for the past 4 years, every paycheck from my job as a graphic designer carefully deposited and guarded like it was made of gold. My first thought was that Marcus had done something stupid. That maybe he'd gotten into some kind of debt I didn't know about, or made a terrible investment, or somehow had a completely separate life I knew nothing about. My second thought was worse, that our marriage was even more fragile than I'd suspected, and now we were going to have a financial explosion on top of everything else. I called him immediately. "Hey babe, what's up?" His voice was casual, comfortable. The voice of someone who definitely hadn't just drained a quarter of our savings account. "Why is there $8,000 missing from our savings?" I asked. I didn't even bother with pleasantries. My heart was hammering in my chest. There was a pause. A long one. "What are you talking about?" Marcus asked, and I could hear the confusion in his voice, real confusion, not the fake kind. "The savings account. The joint one. There are transactions I don't recognize. Where did the money go?" Another pause, longer this time. Then, I don't know. I haven't touched anything. Can you send me the details? So that was when I knew it wasn't Marcus. And that was somehow worse. I forwarded him screenshots of everything, and then I sat at our kitchen table with my coffee growing cold in front of me, watching the little dots appear and disappear as Marcus typed and retyped messages. Finally, he called. "I think it was my dad," he said quietly. The words came out like he was confessing to a crime. "Your dad? Marcus, how would your dad even have access to our joint account?" The explanation came out in stutters and hesitations. Apparently, several years ago, when Marcus's parents were going through some kind of financial crisis, his father had asked to be added as an authorized user on one of our accounts for some reason Marcus couldn't quite remember. Marcus, being the eternally conflict-averse golden retriever of a man that he is, had simply agreed. His father had promised never to touch it. It was just in case of some vague emergency that was never specified. "Marcus," I said, my voice very quiet and very dangerous, "did your father just steal $8,000 from us?" I need to talk to him," Marcus said miserably. That conversation happened later that night, and it was worse than I could have imagined. Marcus's father, Richard, admitted everything with a kind of casualness that made my blood boil. He'd taken the money, yes, $8,000, not just the $7,000 something I'd initially calculated, to buy a car for his daughter-in-law, Stephanie. Marcus's sister's husband's other wife, basically, though that's a weird way to describe her. Stephanie, who has always been treated like the family golden child. Stephanie, who gets invited to every event, who gets included in every group chat, who gets consulted on every family decision. Stephanie, who has never once acknowledged my existence at a family gathering. The money had also funded a European vacation, 2 weeks in France and Italy, the kind of trip that costs more than some people's monthly rent. A trip for Stephanie. A trip that I'd never been invited on, that I'd never even known was happening. Richard's explanation was almost worse than the theft itself. He said he was doing it because Stephanie deserved it and because he and his wife wanted to make sure she felt appreciated. That's the actual word he used. Appreciated. As if buying expensive gifts with stolen money was some kind of love language. I asked Marcus if his father had bought anything for me. Anything at all. He got quiet. The answer was no. In 3 years of marriage, his father had never bought me anything. Not a wedding gift, not a birthday present, not even a fucking Christmas ornament. He treated me like I was an unfortunate accessory to his son, something to be tolerated rather than welcomed. But apparently I was useful enough to steal from. Marcus promised to get the money back. He promised to set boundaries with his father. He promised that this would never happen again. He promised a lot of things in that conversation, and I nodded along and said all the right things, but something had shifted inside me. Some fundamental trust had broken, and I wasn't sure it could be fixed. What I was sure of was this: I was done being invisible. Christmas was 5 weeks away, and the entire family was planning to gather at Richard and Susan's house for the annual celebration. It was going to be the first time everyone was together in over a year. And I had a plan forming in my head, a plan that was equal parts justice and revenge, equal parts validation and self-destruction. I was going to expose every single thing they'd done. I was going to bring the receipts, literally, all the financial statements, and I was going to lay it all out in front of the entire family. I was going to make sure that for once, everyone had to see what I'd been seeing all along, that I didn't matter to them, that my money didn't matter to them, that the only thing that mattered was protecting their precious golden child. I didn't know yet that this decision was going to blow my entire world apart. I just knew I couldn't take the silence anymore. #chunk2, the spiral. The next 3 weeks were the worst of my life, and I've had some genuinely bad weeks. I couldn't stop obsessing over the financial statements. I pulled them up on my phone dozens of times a day, scrolling through the transactions like they were some kind of evidence in a court case, which, I guess, they kind of were. I created a spreadsheet. I organized it by date, by amount, by vendor. I added notes in the margins. Car for Stephanie. Vacation, France/Italy. Cash withdrawal, purpose unknown but suspicious. It was insane. I knew I was being obsessive. Marcus kept asking me to stop, to just let it go, to accept his father's promise that it wouldn't happen again, but I couldn't. How could I just accept it? How could I just move on? We got the money back, Marcus said to me one night, 3 weeks before Christmas. We were lying in bed, not touching, which had become our new normal. Dad repaid everything. It's done. It's not done, I said, staring at the ceiling. It's never going to be done. He stole from us, Marcus. He stole from me. And he's not even sorry. He said he was sorry. He said it like he was apologizing for being late to dinner, not for taking $8,000 that we earned. That I earned. Marcus rolled over to face me, and in the dark, I could barely make out his expression. What do you want me to do? What do you actually want? I didn't answer, because the truth was complicated. Part of me wanted him to rage the way I was raging. Part of me wanted him to march into his father's house and demand a public apology. Part of me wanted him to choose me, actually choose me, unambiguously, over his family's comfort. But I also knew that wasn't fair. Marcus had spent 30 years being conditioned by his family's dysfunction. He couldn't just snap out of it because I wanted him to. That didn't stop me from being angry at him anyway. The Christmas plan started as a fantasy, something I turned over in my head late at night when I couldn't sleep. By week 2, it had become a detailed strategy. I printed out all the financial statements, color-coded printouts that I kept in a folder under the bed. I practiced what I would say in front of the bathroom mirror. I imagined the shocked faces, the denials, the fallout. In my fantasies, everyone saw the truth and suddenly treated me differently. In my fantasies, Richard was humiliated. In my fantasies, Stephanie's golden child status came crashing down. In my fantasies, Marcus suddenly understood that he had to pick a side. In my fantasies, everything changed. But then reality kept intruding. My best friend Cassandra found out what I was planning when I accidentally left my laptop open at her place. She read the spreadsheet in about 2 seconds and gave me a look I'll never forget. You're going to blow up your marriage, she said flatly. No, I'm not. I'm just exposing the truth. By publicly humiliating your husband's family at Christmas? Yeah, that's definitely not going to blow up your marriage. Marcus deserves to know. Marcus already knows. He knows about the money, he knows his dad is shady, he knows his family is dysfunctional. What he doesn't know is that his wife is planning to detonate a nuclear bomb at Christmas dinner, and I'm guessing that's going to be a fun surprise for him. I hadn't told Marcus about the plan. That should have been my first clue that it was a bad idea. But I kept telling myself I would tell him eventually, that I just needed to get everything organized first, that timing was important. The truth was, I knew if I told him, he'd try to stop me. And I didn't want to be stopped. By week 3, I'd started to convince myself that Marcus would thank me. That once everyone saw the evidence, once his family was forced to confront what his father had done, once everyone acknowledged how I'd been treated, Marcus would realize that I was the one who'd been right all along. He'd see that I was strong and brave and that I'd done the right thing. Our marriage would actually get better. I was delusional. In retrospect, I can see that clearly. But in the moment, I was just desperate to feel validated by the people who'd been making me feel invisible for 3 years. Work became impossible to focus on. I was a graphic designer for a mid-sized marketing firm, the kind of job that required actual creativity and concentration. Instead, I found myself staring at blank canvases, my mind somewhere else entirely. My boss pulled me aside in week 2 to ask if everything was okay. I lied and said I was fine. I was very much not fine. Marcus and I barely spoke. We moved around each other like ghosts in our apartment, existing in the same space but not really connecting. He'd try to be affectionate, and I'd pull away. He'd ask what was wrong, and I'd say nothing. He'd suggest we do something together, go to dinner, see a movie, and I'd make an excuse. I was so consumed with my plan that I didn't have room for him anymore. The worst part was that I could see him withdrawing too. He'd started staying late at work. He texted his sister more than he texted me. I caught him on the phone with his mother one night, and they were talking about Christmas plans, and I realized that nobody in his family had any idea what was coming. The Christmas gathering was going to be chaos. And the truly fucked up thing? I was starting to look forward to it. 10 days before Christmas, I finally did something I'd been avoiding. I reread my marriage vows. We'd written them ourselves, which felt important to remember. I'd promised to be honest with Marcus. I'd promised to work through problems together. I'd promised to love him even when things were hard. Instead, I was planning to humiliate his family, and by extension, him, without giving him any warning or choice in the matter. But I told myself it was necessary. I told myself that the truth mattered more than his comfort. I told myself that sometimes you have to blow things up to rebuild them correctly. I told myself a lot of things that sounded reasonable in the dark, alone in my apartment, practicing my speech in the mirror. None of them made me feel better. Hashtag chunk 3, the breaking point. For days before Christmas, my mother-in-law called me. Not Marcus. Me. Which was unprecedented enough that I actually checked my phone twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Hi, sweetheart. Patricia's voice came through with that particular tone she used when she was about to ask me to do something I didn't want to do. I was wondering if you and Marcus would be willing to come over a bit early on Christmas Eve? Richard wants to do a family cocktail hour before dinner, just to reconnect. You know how he gets with the holidays. I knew exactly how Richard got with the holidays. Manipulative. Performative. Fake. I'll check with Marcus, I said, which was code for, I'll need to recalibrate my plan because I hadn't anticipated having to see Richard before Christmas Day. Wonderful. I'm so looking forward to it. And honey? I just want to say, Richard told me about the money situation. He's been so upset about it. He said you've been cold to him, and he just wants to make things right. I think an early gathering might help us all remember what's important. What was important? As if Richard hadn't stolen from us. As if the money had just materialized in the account on its own. That sounds nice, I lied. After we hung up, I sat on my couch for 20 minutes without moving. The plan was already shifting in my head, becoming more complicated. I'd wanted to expose Richard in front of the whole family at once, to not give him any opportunity to defend himself or spin the narrative. But now he knew, or at least suspected, that something was coming. Had Marcus told him? Had he somehow sensed my betrayal across the invisible threads that bound him to his father? I needed to talk to Marcus, but I still hadn't told him about the Christmas plan. That conversation kept building in my chest like a pressure that never quite released. Every time I thought about saying it out loud, "I'm planning to expose your father at Christmas," I chickened out. What if he got angry? What if he insisted on telling Richard in advance? What if he threatened to leave? That last one kept me up at night. Instead of talking to him, I did what I'd been doing for weeks. I obsessed alone. I pulled up the spreadsheet on my laptop. I reviewed the statements one more time. I reread the email Richard had sent when he promised he wouldn't touch the account again. The email was carefully worded. He never actually apologized, never actually admitted wrongdoing. He just said, "I understand you have concerns about the account, and I respect that. I won't make any additional withdrawals." Additional withdrawals. As if the first massive ones were just normal. That night, I made a decision. I would tell Marcus about the plan. Not because I'd suddenly developed a conscience or realized Cassandra was right, she was, but I wasn't ready to admit that, but because I needed him to understand that I was doing this for us. For our marriage. For our future. I practiced what I was going to say while I made dinner, chicken that I burned slightly because I was too in my head to pay attention. Marcus came home at 6:47 p.m., exactly 17 minutes later than usual, which somehow felt significant. "Hey," he said, kissing the top of my head. It was a gesture so normal, so loving, that something in my chest cracked a little. "Something smells interesting." I might have gotten distracted, I admitted. We ate dinner in the kind of companionable silence that used to be comfortable but had become suffocating. Marcus talked about his day, a project at work, a colleague who'd annoyed him, plans for next year. I nodded and made appropriate sounds while my practiced speech sat in my throat like a stone. After dinner, as we were clearing plates, I said it, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting." Marcus froze. I watched his face go through several emotions: concern, resignation, fear. "Okay," he said slowly. "That's not a great opening line. I know. But I need to tell you what I've been planning. For Christmas." And then, before I could second-guess myself into oblivion, I told him everything. The spreadsheet, the color-coded printouts under the bed, the fantasy of exposure, the plan to present all the evidence at the family gathering. I told him about my conversation with Patricia, about the early cocktail hour, about how Richard apparently knew something was coming. Marcus listened. He didn't interrupt, though his jaw clenched tighter as I talked. By the time I finished, he was sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. "Tell me you're joking," he said finally. "I'm not. Tell me you haven't actually been planning this for weeks without talking to me." "I can't." He looked up at me, and his face was a mixture of hurt and anger that I hadn't expected. "Why didn't you tell me? We talk about everything, and you kept this huge thing, completely to yourself?" "Because I knew you'd try to stop me. Because it's a terrible idea. Jesus Christ, you're planning to publicly humiliate my family on Christmas without even asking me how I feel about it. Without giving me any choice in the matter. Do you understand how fucked up that is?" "Yes," I said, and I did. I really did. But I also didn't care as much as I should have. "But Marcus, your father stole from us. He's never going to face consequences unless someone makes him. He's never going to understand how much he hurt me unless. This isn't about making him understand anything. This is about revenge. And you're using our marriage, our family relationships, our future, you're using all of it as a weapon to punish people who've hurt you. They've hurt you too. I know. But that doesn't mean we get to blow everything up. That doesn't give you the right to make unilateral decisions about how we handle this." He stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. The kitchen suddenly felt very cold. "I'm not going," he said quietly. "To the early cocktail hour. To Christmas. Any of it. Not if you're planning to do this." "What?" "Marcus, no. You want to expose my father? Fine. Do it. But you do it without me. You take responsibility for the fallout. You explain to my family why you humiliated them. And you accept that my mother might not forgive you. That my sister might decide she hates you. That I might have to choose, like you wanted, but not in the way you thought. You're threatening to leave me? I'm telling you that you're forcing me into a corner, and I don't like it." The silence that followed was different from the comfortable ones. It was the silence of something breaking. I had 96 hours until Christmas, and I had no idea what I was going to do. #Chunk4, the unraveling. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Marcus, hyper-aware of every inch of space between us, a distance that felt both impossible and inevitable. He turned away from me almost immediately after his ultimatum, and I'd sat alone at the kitchen table for an hour, staring at the chicken I'd burned, watching it grow cold on my plate. By 3 a.m., I was in the living room with my laptop, the spreadsheet glowing on the screen like evidence of my own pathology. Was Marcus right? Was this about revenge rather than justice? The distinction felt important and also meaningless. Didn't revenge and justice look the same when you were the one delivering it? I pulled up my email and started drafting a message to Cassandra. I didn't send it, couldn't send it, because she'd already told me what she thought, and I didn't want to hear that "I told you so" that would surely come. But I wrote it anyway, the words pouring out at 3:47 a.m. to no one. Asterisk, you were right. This is blowing up my marriage. But I don't know how to unsee what I've seen. I don't know how to go back to being the person who didn't know her father-in-law was stealing from her. I don't know how to make myself smaller to keep the peace. Asterisk. I deleted it without sending. Marcus left for work the next morning without saying much beyond "I'll be late tonight." We didn't have a goodbye kiss. We didn't have a goodbye at all, really, just the sound of the door closing and me sitting on the couch in my pajamas at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday. My mother called around noon. This was unusual enough that I almost didn't answer. "Hi, honey," she said, and I could hear the wariness in her voice. "How are you doing?" "I'm fine," I lied automatically. "Are you?" "Because Patricia called me this morning. She was very concerned about you. She said you seemed stressed." "When she called about the Christmas plans?" "Of course she did. Of course Patricia had called my mother to try and manipulate the situation from another angle. The sheer audacity made something hot spike through my chest. I'm not stressed, Mom. Everything's fine. She mentioned something about financial concerns? I didn't quite understand what she was talking about, but she seemed to think I might be able to help smooth things over between you and Richard. Apparently, he's very upset about some misunderstanding. I closed my eyes. This was exactly how manipulative families worked. Richard didn't apologize directly. He had his wife call my mother-in-law to call my mother to hint at amends. It was manipulation dressed up as concern, a web of people designed to pressure me into silence before I even spoke. There's no misunderstanding, I said carefully. Richard took money from our account. A lot of money. And I'm tired of pretending it didn't happen. The silence on the other end was very loud. Oh, my mother said finally. Oh, honey. How much money? Over $15,000. Did he steal it? Or did Marcus? It was theft, Mom. Richard accessed our joint account without permission and used it to fund gifts and vacations for his favorite daughter-in-law. The one who isn't me. I could hear my mother processing this, trying to fit it into a narrative where everyone remained reasonable and conflict stayed beneath the surface, where the right amount of politeness could solve anything. Have you talked to Marcus about this? Yes. He's furious with me for planning to expose it publicly. Oh. Well. That's understandable, isn't it? That's his father. That's his family. He's my family too, Mom. We're married. His problems are my problems. I know, sweetheart, but publicly humiliating his father at Christmas, that's not going to make things better. That's going to make things so much worse. Has he even offered to pay it back? He promised not to do it again, which is not the same as apologizing or repaying the money. But if you expose him in front of everyone, you're not giving him an opportunity to make it right. You're just destroying him. There it was. The expectation that I should make space for Richard's feelings. That my hurt should take a backseat to the preservation of family harmony. That my public humiliation was acceptable, but Richard's consequences were not. I have to go, I said. Honey, wait. I hung up. I called in sick to work for the rest of the week. I told my supervisor I had the flu. It wasn't entirely a lie. There was something sick about the way my stomach felt, something feverish about my obsession with the spreadsheet and the timeline and the inevitable Christmas reckoning. Marcus came home Thursday night to find me exactly where I'd been that morning, on the couch, still in pajamas, now on day 3. The apartment had taken on the stale quality of a space where someone had given up. He set down his work bag carefully, like I might break if he made sudden movements. We need to talk, he said. Okay. He sat in the armchair across from me, not next to me on the couch. Deliberately far. I talked to my dad. My entire body went rigid. You did what? He called me at work. Mom had apparently called him after talking to Patricia about you being upset. The whole family is now aware that something is wrong, and my father is very confused about what you think he did. He knows exactly what he did. He says it was a loan. That he was going to pay it back and was just waiting for the right time to tell us. The absurdity of it nearly made me laugh. A loan? He never asked permission. He never said anything until I confronted him about it. He's lying. I know he's lying, Marcus said tiredly. But I also know that you're planning to detonate our entire family dynamic over this, and I'm asking you, I'm begging you, please find another way. There is no other way. If I let this go, if I don't expose what he did, then nothing changes. He keeps doing this. I keep getting treated like I'm worthless. And you keep choosing him over me. I'm not choosing him. I'm trying to save our marriage. You're trying to save your family's reputation. Marcus looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his face. It was resignation. The expression of someone who realized they were losing something they couldn't save. Maybe we should see a therapist, he said quietly. Before or after I ruin Christmas? Instead of ruining Christmas. Before. After. I don't know. But I know that the person I'm looking at right now is someone I don't quite recognize, and I don't know how to help you when you're this focused on revenge. It's not revenge. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure anymore. #Chunk 5, the breaking point. Marcus slept in the guest room that night. He didn't ask permission or make a big announcement about it. He just grabbed his pillow from our bed around midnight and quietly closed the guest room door behind him. The gesture was somehow worse than if he'd yelled at me. Yelling I could have fought against. This was surrender. I lay awake in our bed, which suddenly felt enormous, and texted Cassandra at 2 a.m. He's moved to the guest room. She called me immediately. Oh honey, no. He thinks I'm crazy. He thinks this is about revenge, not justice, and maybe he's right, and I don't even care anymore because I'm so tired of pretending everything is fine when nothing is fine. Okay, slow down. You're spiraling. I'm not spiraling. I'm clarifying. There's a difference. I pulled up the spreadsheet again on my phone, even though I'd memorized every transaction by now. He called his father, Cassandra. He basically told Richard that I was planning to expose him, which means now Richard knows, which means now Richard has time to prepare his narrative, and tomorrow is Christmas Eve, and I have no idea what I'm going to do. You're going to take a breath. You're going to get some sleep. You're going to remember that this isn't about winning an argument with Marcus, it's about addressing a real violation. And if Marcus can't see that, that's his problem to solve, not yours. It's very much my problem because I'm married to him. I know, babe. I know. But you can't set yourself on fire to keep everyone else warm. After we hung up, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I called Patricia. It was 2:47 a.m. She answered on the 5th ring, her voice sharp with alarm. Hello? Is everything okay? Is someone hurt? No one's hurt, I said. I just wanted to hear what you'd say if I asked you directly. Did you know Richard was stealing from us? There was a pause. I heard her shift in bed, heard the murmur of her husband, Richard's brother, I assumed, asking what was going on. I don't think stealing is the right word, Patricia said carefully, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Richard has always been generous with family. Sometimes his generosity outpaces his own resources. So that's a yes. You knew. How long have you known? I'm not going to do this on the phone in the middle of the night. This is a conversation for when everyone is calm and reasonable. I'm perfectly calm. And I've been reasonable for the entire duration of this marriage. I've been reasonable while being treated as less important than your daughter. I've been reasonable while my money was used to spoil the golden child. I've been reasonable for years. And that generosity has clearly made you very angry, Patricia said, and there was something in her tone that made me want to scream. Not anger, pity. She was pitying me for being upset about being stolen from. Don't you dare patronize me. I'm not patronizing you. I'm suggesting that Christmas morning is not the time to air grievances. It never is. These things have a way of exploding in ways we can't predict or control. Families need time to process, to understand each other's motivations. I understand his motivations perfectly. He doesn't respect me. None of you do. That's not true, Patricia said, and her voice had taken on that measured, reasonable quality that made me realize she was now treating this like a negotiation. We all care about you very much. Richard made a mistake in judgment, yes, but his intentions were good. He wanted to help. I hung up. I didn't sleep. I got up at 4 a.m. and started cleaning the apartment with a kind of manic energy that comes from having nowhere else to put your rage. I scrubbed the kitchen until my hands were raw. I vacuumed the living room. I reorganized the bookshelf by color, which we'd never done before and served no purpose other than to keep my hands busy. At 6 a.m., Marcus came out of the guest room in his pajamas. He stopped when he saw the state of the apartment. You've been up all night, he said. It wasn't a question. I called Patricia at 2 a.m. He closed his eyes. Why would you do that? Because I wanted to know if she knew. And she did. They all know, Marcus. Your whole family is complicit in this, and they're all trying to manipulate me into silence right now. Your mother called my mother. Patricia called your mother. Richard's probably calling the priest to get a blessing for his generosity. My dad called me again this morning, Marcus said quietly. He said that if you bring this up at Christmas, if you publicly accuse him of anything, he's going to say that I put you up to it. That you're a gold digger trying to isolate him from his family. That this is about you being jealous of my sister. The breath went out of my lungs. He's going to make me the villain. Yes. And you're telling me this because you should know what you're walking into. Because I need you to understand that there are real consequences here, and they're not just about our marriage. He's going to destroy you with this family. He's going to make sure everyone believes you're the problem, not him. I sank onto the couch. The apartment suddenly felt very cold. So what? I just let him win? I just accept being stolen from and gaslit into thinking I'm the unreasonable one? No, Marcus said, and he sat down next to me, the first time he'd willingly sat near me in days. I'm saying that maybe the public Christmas explosion isn't the right move. Maybe there's another way to handle this that doesn't require nuking everything. Like what? Letting him pay it back privately while everyone continues to treat me like I'm beneath them? I don't know, Marcus said. I really don't. But I know that if you go through with this, if you expose him tomorrow morning, I don't know if our marriage survives it. And I need you to know that I'm not saying that as a threat. I'm saying it as a fact about who I am. I can't be the person who orchestrates his father's public humiliation. I'm not asking you to orchestrate it. I'm just asking you not to stop me. I know. And I don't know how to be okay with that. He went back to the guest room. I sat on the couch and watched the sun come up on Christmas Eve, and I realized that I was completely alone. Not lonely, alone. There was a difference. The spreadsheet sat on the coffee table like a weapon I'd been sharpening, and for the first time, I let myself consider the possibility that using it would cost me more than keeping silent. But by then, it was too late to put it away. #chunk 6, the point of no return. Christmas Eve morning arrived like a verdict I hadn't asked for. The apartment was spotless, obsessively, aggressively clean, and I sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, staring at my phone. 17 messages in the family group chat. 17. Patricia had created one last night at 11 p.m., titled Christmas Morning Plans, and it had exploded into a carefully choreographed performance of normalcy. Arrival times. Breakfast assignments. A note from Richard about how excited he was to see everyone, how much he'd been looking forward to this holiday with his complete family. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I called in a favor from someone I probably shouldn't have. My sister-in-law Jennifer, Marcus's sister, not the golden child, had always been cordial to me, though we'd never been close. She lived 3 hours away and rarely made family events, which I'd always assumed was coincidence. Now I wondered if she'd been avoiding them for the same reason I'd started wanting to. Hey, she answered on the second ring, sounding surprised. Everything okay? I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Have you ever noticed your father spending a lot of money on Melissa? Like, unusual amounts? There was a pause. In that pause, I heard the truth. Oh my God, Jennifer said quietly. This is about that, isn't it? Marcus told me you found out. He called me yesterday asking if I'd ever noticed anything, which was his weird way of warning me that something was about to go down. My chest tightened. So you have noticed. Everyone's noticed. We just don't talk about it because that's how our family works. We notice things and then we pretend we didn't. It's like a collective hallucination. She sighed. Look, I get why you're upset. I'd be upset too. But Christmas is maybe not the... Please don't, I interrupted. Please don't be another person telling me that Christmas morning isn't the right time. Everyone's been telling me that, and I'm sick of it. Okay, Jennifer said, and there was something almost gentle in her voice that made me want to cry. Okay, I won't. But I will tell you this, if you do this today, if you blow this up, you need to be prepared for my mother to choose Dad over you. And for Marcus too. I don't know. I don't know what Marcus is going to do because he's always been Dad's person, and that's a complicated position to be in. He's already basically told me he'll leave me if I go through with it. He didn't say that. He said our marriage might not survive it. That's the same thing. No, Jennifer said firmly. That's him being terrified and not knowing how to handle it. But saying something might not survive and actively choosing to destroy it are two different things. My brother is a lot of things, but he's not cruel. He's just stuck. After we hung up, I sat with that word. Stuck. It fit Marcus in a way that made me angry and sad simultaneously. He was stuck between loyalty to his father and loyalty to me, and the fact that he saw those two things as mutually exclusive was itself the problem. Around noon, Marcus emerged from the guest room showered and dressed in the navy sweater his mother loved, the one that made his eyes look gray instead of blue. He'd gotten dressed for Christmas. We were still supposed to go to his parents' house at 2 p.m. The plan, as far as I could tell from the group chat, was brunch, gift exchange, some kind of appetizer spread for dinner. You're dressed, I said. I'm dressed, he confirmed. Are you coming? I don't know. Are you going to stop me if I bring up the money? He closed his eyes. I can't stop you. But I'm asking you, as your husband, as someone who loves you, please don't do it. Not today. Please. And when, Marcus? When is the right time? When is it okay for me to be upset about being stolen from? I don't have an answer for you. Exactly. Because there isn't one. There's no moment where your father decides to voluntarily confess what he did. There's no moment where your mother decides I'm worth defending. There's no moment where your sister thinks I deserve an apology. The only moment that exists is the one I create. He picked up his keys from the counter. His hands were shaking slightly. I'm going to go to my parents' house, he said quietly. I'm going to sit through brunch and exchange gifts and pretend everything is normal. And if you want to come with me, I want that more than I want almost anything. But I can't. I can't be part of this. You're already part of this. You're part of it by doing nothing. I know, he said, and his voice broke slightly. I know I am, and I hate it. I hate what my father did to you. I hate that my family has made you feel less important, less worthy. But I also can't be the person who burns my family down, even if they deserve it. I can't do it. And I need you to understand that about me before you make your choice. After he left, I was alone in the apartment again. I showered. I put on the red dress I bought for Christmas, the one that made me feel powerful and present. I did my makeup carefully, winged eyeliner, red lipstick, armor. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. The spreadsheet was still on the coffee table. The evidence was still ironclad. The theft was still real, the betrayal still valid, the anger still justified. But looking at myself in that red dress, I was suddenly aware of how much I'd built my identity around this moment. Around being wronged. Around having the courage to speak when everyone else stayed silent. Around finally being heard. What happened if I did it and I still wasn't heard? What happened if I exposed Richard and Patricia defended him, and Marcus resented me forever, and Jennifer never called again, and nothing changed except that my marriage was damaged and my relationship with the entire family was poisoned? What if the only thing I won was the satisfaction of being right? I picked up my phone and looked at the time, 1:47 p.m. My fingers hovered over the group chat. Over a message to Marcus. Over a call to Cassandra. Instead, I did something I hadn't done since this all started. I sat down on the couch and I cried, not angry tears, but something deeper and more complicated. Tears for the version of myself that had gotten excited about Christmas. Tears for the version of my marriage that had existed before I found that transaction history. Tears for the impossible position I was in, where every choice felt like choosing something and losing something else. My phone buzzed at 1:52 p.m. A text from Patricia, *see you soon, sweetheart. So looking forward to seeing you today, *. The casual cruelty of that message, that sweetheart, that assumption I was still coming, nearly broke me. I grabbed my coat. I grabbed the spreadsheet. And I made my choice. #Chunk7. The drive to Richard and Patricia's house took 45 minutes, and I spent every single one of them questioning my decision. The spreadsheet sat on the passenger seat next to me, printed and highlighted and prepared like a legal document, which, I supposed, it was. Evidence of theft. Evidence of betrayal. Evidence that I mattered enough to be stolen from, which was a fucked up thing to find comforting, but there it was. My phone had buzzed 3 times during the drive. All from Marcus. The first 2 were just his location, he'd arrived at his parents' house. The third was a message, *, please don't do this. Please just come enjoy the day, *. I didn't respond. The house was decorated the way it always was for Christmas, tasteful and expensive and utterly soulless. White lights wrapped around the columns on the front porch. A wreath on the door that probably cost more than my car payment. Inside, I could hear laughter, the kind of bright, easy laughter that only happened in families that didn't have secrets, or who were very, very good at pretending. I sat in my car for 5 full minutes before I got out. When I opened the front door, it was like walking into a Hallmark movie. Everyone was there, Patricia and Richard in matching Christmas sweaters that looked intentionally coordinated, Melissa in a cream-colored dress that somehow made her look both effortlessly elegant and aggressively expensive, Marcus standing by the fireplace with a drink in his hand, Jennifer, who must have driven down early, which meant she knew, and 3 of Richard's business associates who were apparently close enough to the family to warrant a Christmas invitation. The room went quiet for approximately 2 seconds when I walked in. That's how long it took for them to process that I'd actually shown up, and that I looked, not like I was here to have a nice family Christmas. Oh, wonderful. Patricia exclaimed, recovering first. You made it. Come, we're just about to sit down for brunch. Marcus, get your wife a drink. Marcus's eyes met mine across the room, and I saw panic there. Real, visceral panic. He knew. Somehow, even though I hadn't told him I was coming, he knew that I'd made my choice, and it wasn't the one he'd been hoping for. Actually, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, I'm not here to stay long. But I need everyone to sit down. This will only take a few minutes. The shift in atmosphere was immediate. Patricia's smile froze. Richard's hand, which had been reaching for a glass of champagne, paused midair. Melissa looked genuinely confused, which somehow made this harder. She was so completely unaware that anything was wrong that I almost envied her. Is this about the Hendersons? One of the business associates asked hopefully. Because I thought we cleared that up last. Everyone, I repeated, louder. Please sit down. Jennifer moved first, settling herself onto the edge of an armchair with the careful posture of someone preparing for impact. Marcus set his drink down and took a step toward me, but I held up my hand. He stopped, conflicted, and I watched the war play out on his face, the desire to protect me or protect his family or protect himself. He wasn't sure which. Richard finally sat, and the rest followed like dominoes. Patricia positioned herself next to him on the sofa, her hand finding his arm in a way that made me realize this was going to be framed as an attack on both of them, no matter what I said. Melissa remained standing, her expression shifting from confusion to something that might have been the beginning of understanding. Approximately 6 months ago, I began, and my own voice sounded strange to me, formal, cold, like someone else entirely was speaking. Someone accessed my joint savings account without authorization and made a series of large withdrawals totaling $15,432. Patricia made a small sound, something between a gasp and a denial. These withdrawals were traced to a vehicle purchase totaling $8,000, a European vacation package worth $5,000, and several smaller expenses totaling the remainder. All of these expenses were made on behalf of Melissa, and all of them were funded by my money. I pulled the spreadsheet from my bag and held it up, though I knew they couldn't read it from their seats. I didn't need them to read it. I just needed them to see it. To see that I'd done my homework. That this wasn't an accusation based on suspicion or hurt feelings, this was documentation. I would like to know, I continued, my voice not wavering even though my hands were starting to shake, why my father-in-law felt entitled to steal from me. And I would like to know why no one, thought this was worth mentioning to me. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the Christmas music playing softly in the background seemed to pause, as if the entire universe was holding its breath. Now, hold on, Richard started, his voice taking on that smooth, negotiating tone he probably used in boardrooms. I think there's been a misunderstanding about the nature of the situation. There's been no misunderstanding, I said. I have bank statements. I have transaction records. I have the confirmation email from the car dealership and the travel agency. I have proof. And more importantly, I have a question that I need answered right now, in front of everyone. Did you or did you not know about this? I was looking directly at Marcus when I asked it, and I watched his face crumple slightly before he looked away. That was answer enough. Melissa made a sound, something between a laugh and a sob, and suddenly she was backing away, shaking her head. I didn't know, she said, and she sounded genuinely distressed, which actually made this worse somehow. I swear I didn't know where that money was coming from. Dad said it was part of my birthday. Your birthday was in April, I said flatly. I wouldn't have accepted it if. But you did accept it, I said. You accepted it and you wore it and you enjoyed it and you never once questioned where it came from, because why would you? The family golden child doesn't ask questions. The family golden child just accepts what she's given. Patricia stood up abruptly. That is completely unfair and you know it. Melissa has always been kind to you. Kind to me? I felt something dangerous and sharp rise in my chest. She's ignored me. The entire family has ignored me. And they've stolen from me while they did it. We didn't steal anything, Richard said, and now his voice had that edge, that dangerous calm of someone who was used to controlling every situation. That's inflammatory language and you know it. I made some financial decisions regarding family members. Family members, I repeated. But not me. Never me. The spreadsheet felt suddenly heavy in my hand, like it weighed more than paper should. So here's what's going to happen, I said quietly. I'm going to leave. But before I do, I want the full amount, plus interest, transferred to my account by New Year's Day. And I want an explanation that doesn't involve the words misunderstanding or family or intentions. I turned to Marcus. He was staring at me like I was someone he'd never met before. I'll be at the apartment, I told him. When you figure out where you stand, let me know. And then I did the hardest thing I'd done yet. I walked toward the door, knowing that when I opened it, everything behind me might collapse. Chunk 8. The door closed behind me with a soft click that somehow sounded final. I made it to my car, got inside, and sat perfectly still for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 30 seconds. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't get the key in the ignition on the first try. On the second try, I managed it, and the engine rumbled to life. I didn't drive away immediately. Instead, I sat there, staring at the perfect house with its perfect decorations and its imperfect, stolen from me money, and I waited to feel vindicated. I didn't. What I felt was hollow. Like I'd been holding my breath for so long that finally exhaling had left me empty. My phone buzzed as I was pulling out of the driveway. Then again. And again. Marcus. Patricia. Jennifer, who apparently had a different number now. Richard's assistant, somehow. I silenced the phone without looking at the messages and drove home on autopilot, my brain in some kind of protective fugue state. The apartment was cold and dark when I arrived. I turned on every light, made tea I didn't want, and sat on the couch still wearing my coat. I'd been there for maybe 20 minutes when my phone rang. Not a message, an actual call. I almost didn't answer, but something in me recognized that this was it. The moment that would decide everything. It was Marcus. Hi, he said, and he sounded destroyed. Absolutely broken. I know you don't want to talk to me right now, and I understand that, but I need to tell you something. I didn't say anything. I just listened. After you left, Dad lost it, Marcus continued, and I could hear the raw edge of his voice, the kind of raw that comes from crying. Not in an angry way. He just collapsed. He sat down and he started talking about his own father. About how his father never thought he was good enough, never validated anything he did, and how when he became successful, he made a promise to himself that his kids would never feel that way. That they would never feel overlooked or second best or, Marcus's voice broke. Or invisible. I waited. Melissa was having trouble at her job, he went on. Not serious trouble, but she was losing confidence. She mentioned wanting to take a vacation to recharge. And Dad, he thought that by giving her these things without asking, without burdening her with the knowledge that she was being given charity, he could make her feel valuable. He thought he was protecting her. With my money, I said quietly. I know, and he knows, and Mom is absolutely furious with him. She didn't know, by the way. I need you to know that. She found out at the same time as everyone else, and she's dealing with her own stuff with him right now. I pulled my coat tighter around myself even though the apartment was heating up. The thing is, Marcus said, he was so focused on making sure Melissa never felt invisible that he made you completely invisible. He gave to her so much that there was nothing left over for you. And that's actually insane when you say it out loud. And I've been complicit in that for years because I didn't want to be the bad guy. I didn't want to be the one who rocked the boat. I didn't want to have to stand up to him. And now? I asked. Now I'm standing up to him. I told him that I need to decide whether I want to be in his life and on what terms. And those terms include treating my wife like she's part of this family, not like she's some kind of acceptable loss. And it includes him apologizing to you and making this right, not because I'm asking him to, but because he actually understands why this was wrong. I closed my eyes. I also told him that if he doesn't handle this the right way, he might lose me. Not as a dramatic ultimatum, but as a statement of fact. I can't be married to you and also be complicit in what he's doing. I can't serve two masters. And I choose you. Something in my chest loosened slightly. He's transferring the money tomorrow, Marcus continued. With interest. He's also writing you a check for an additional $2,000 as a personal apology. And he's agreed to go to therapy to figure out why he's been playing out his own childhood wounds through us. Marcus. But that's not really about you, he said quickly. That's his work to do. What I need to say to you is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I didn't stand up to him sooner. I'm sorry that I let you be treated like you didn't matter. I'm sorry that my family's dysfunction became your problem, and I'm sorry that you had to be the brave one. I should have been brave. I should have protected you. I opened my eyes and looked at my apartment, at the life we were building together, the half-decorated tree in the corner that I'd put up myself, the photos on the wall of us at moments that mattered. Are you still coming home? Marcus asked quietly, and I realized he meant tonight. This moment. Right now. I'm already home, I said, and then, softer, but I'll wait for you. He arrived 40 minutes later, still wearing the shirt he'd been wearing at his parents' house, his hair slightly disheveled. He stood in the doorway like he wasn't sure if he was allowed in, and I realized that this uncertainty, this humility, was something I'd never seen from him before. My husband had always been so sure of himself, so confident in his place in the world. Come here, I said, and when he did, I held him like he might fall apart if I didn't, like he might need to know that he was still tethered to something solid. I'm going to do better, he whispered into my hair. I'm going to be better. We'll both do better, I said. But Marcus? This was the right thing. This was always the right thing. He pulled back to look at me, and I saw in his eyes that he finally understood what I'd been trying to say all along, that being invisible to your own family was a kind of death, and that sometimes you have to blow everything apart just to prove that you exist. The money came through the next morning, plus interest, plus the apology check. It wasn't a magic fix. But it was a beginning. It was the moment when I stopped being invisible, and that was worth everything.